Hi there, welcome. Thank you for attending this WeSys webinar. We're so happy it's brought to you all from our strategic partner Workday, and they're going to be presenting on who changed my lock, keeping pace with identity and access management. Before we dive into the presentation, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Lynn Dome, Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by our acronym WeSys, as in We Sisters, because that's exactly what we are. We're a cyber sisterhood. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here for a quick second to go over a little bit about the WeSys organization. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that's comprised of over 4,700 members, women, male allies, and advocates, all with a strong mission and passion to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. And we do so by creating opportunities. We have a member forum within that member forum, we have special interest groups such as neurodiversity in cybersecurity, Latinas in cybersecurity, military spouses, non-traditional career changers. We have data privacy, cybersecurity law. You name it, there's a special interest group in there for you. And if you can't find an interest group that suits your needs, you're always welcome to start and launch your own. We have many different training programs, such as the Security Training Scholarship made possible by Google, the AWS Learning Series made possible by AWS. We have the Gamified Cybersecurity Challenges made possible by Target, and that was in partnership with ICMCP. We have newsletters, webinars, virtual summits. Our spring virtual career fair is March 25th. If anyone that's listening is interested in learning more about that, please go to our website, wicsys.org, WICYS.org, and go under events, and you'll see about our virtual career fair that's coming up. Many different scholarships, grants, and awards for our annual conference. So we started as a conference in 2014, and now we're a nonprofit. Our annual conference is still an extremely important initiative of ours, and our upcoming conference is September 8th through the 10th in Aurora, Colorado. We have media and speaking opportunities, our Job Board Plus Plus, where strategic partners recruit from year round, and our members have the opportunity to update their profiles, upload their resumes, and get recruited year round. We have a really strong veterans apprenticeship program where that includes a 2-year paid for training, 2-year paid for apprenticeship, and then secure employment at the end. If you are a female veteran or know of a female veteran that might be interested in the cybersecurity careers out of the veterans apprenticeship program, please reach out to us. Our applications are opening up March 11th and they will be closing April 1st. We have a speakers bureau, a mentor-mentee program that we're really proud of. We have 707 mentees, 185 mentors, and it's a 12-month structured framework actually developed with the assistance of Workday, which we're really pleased to announce. We're really grateful for that strategic partnership and all the contributions that they make to the diversity and inclusion efforts in the cybersecurity workforce. So the 12-month structured framework is designed to upskill and up-level women as they prepare for advancement in their cybersecurity careers. And then, of course, we have allies and advocates for action, 35 professional affiliates. We have a global reach with Australia, Canada, India, East Africa, Southern Africa, and the UK, and France. We just welcomed France last week as well. And then 114 student chapters in Canada, Costa Rica, India, Nigeria, and the United States. And we owe all that thanks to the special founding partners, Cisco, Facebook, and Palo Alto, and then our strategic partners, AWS, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon, Cisco, Facebook, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Optum, Google, Nike, SentinelOne, and Workday, who brings you this webinar today, and Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Flatiron, Fortinet, Cure Technologies, Home Depot, IBM, Oak Ridge National Lab, Palo Alto Networks, SANS Institute, SAP, SpearTip, Starbucks, Target, University of California, San Diego, and Verizon. So just a little bit of housekeeping is that this session is recorded. Everyone that registers will be receiving a copy of the recorded session, and it remains as video on our website and on the Bright Talk channel. But all throughout the webinar, you're going to be presented a lot of incredible information. And so I would encourage you to ask questions at any time. They will be lined up and ready to go when the presenters are ready to answer the questions at the end of the presentation. So if you aren't a member already, we encourage you to be a member. There's our website, and you could join. There's member benefits that are there. And also subscribe to our newsletter to always stay up to date on all things WeSys. And in addition to that, we're all over social media and would love for you to engage with our community there as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I'm going to hand it on over to Shalmali for her to take the Workday presentation from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, thank you so much. So hi all, welcome to our presentation today. My name is Shalmali. I'm part of the security product management team here at Workday. Very happy and excited to be here because I'm representing Workday as well as I'm an alum of CMU, so very happy to be here. I have about 5 years of experience in security and a little over 2 years in Workday now. Passing it over to Sheetal. Sheetal, if you're on mute, we can't hear you.
Yep, my bad. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheetal Kanade, and I'm an engineering manager in Security Products Workday. Let me begin by wishing you all a happy International Women's Day in advance and a happy Women's History Month as we celebrate our achievements together. In my almost 5 years career at Workday, I have watched the evolving landscape of identity and access management, IAM for short, and worked with some cutting-edge technologies in IAM to ensure our customers a world-class security. Thank you for joining us today as Shalmali and I walk through some of the changes in customer identity and access management space. Digital identity is at the center of every company's digital transformation. The value of the customer profile data that is linked to customer identity has grown dramatically, and it is now a crucial success factor for many companies. Why is the customer profile data so valuable? Well, because it forms the foundation for analyzing, understanding, and predicting consumer behavior and consumer journeys. From first contact and sign up to purchase decision and long-term brand loyalty. Today, organizations worldwide are combating cybersecurity threats such as identity theft, account takeover, and privacy abuse. The modern infrastructure is moving towards cloud technologies. Its business model is becoming more global and is leveraging other cloud applications for some of its own business operations. Many of the legacy IAM solutions built for private data centers are simply inadequate in solving the challenges of cloud security and protecting organization accounts, services, and data. There needs to be a fundamental shift in strategy to meet the security demands of changing, evolving infrastructure. So as we see so far here, there is one consistent element appearing: move, shift, change. So how about we talk about change through a story? Everyone loves a good story, right? And what better way to talk about change than through the timeless business classic, Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. Who Moved My Cheese is a simple yet enlightening parable which describes change and how four individuals view change and how they react to change. Allegorically, Who Moved My Cheese features four characters: two mice, Sniff and Scurry, and two little people, Hem and Haw. The names of the little people are taken from the phrase hem and haw, a term for indecisiveness. They live in a maze, which is a representation of one's environment, and they look for cheese, which is a representation for success and security. Initially, just like a greenfield project without any cheese, each group, the mice and human, pair off to navigate the uncharted territory of the maze, searching for cheese. They monitor the environment, examine their initial failures, revise their strategies, and continue to look for the best possible possibly the largest reserve of cheese. Just like any team starts out a new project, right? Identifying the best-in-class technology, industry standards, and infrastructure to suit their business needs. At Workday, we took the same approach as we started on some of our initiatives, and we'll talk about them as we progress through the presentation. After some serious search, one day, both groups happened upon cheese-filled station at Station C. Content with their find, Hem and Haw slowly established a routine around their daily intake of cheese. They built themselves comfortable lives and start feeling entitled to the cheese. Also, slowly becoming complacent and arrogant in the process. How many of us have worked on greenfield projects? We're very proud of our achievements, but decided to be content with maintenance of product, features, and never really had the time or resource to invest in the next generation of the product. I bet quite a few are nodding your heads right now. One day, Sniff and Scurry arrive at Cheese Station C to find no cheese left. But they're not particularly surprised. Noticing the cheese supply dwindle, they have been preparing themselves mentally to take on the arduous but inevitable task of finding more cheese. Leaving the Cheese Station C behind, they begin their hunt for new cheese together. Sometimes it may be simple things like keeping your libraries upgraded as your product matures. That can help you prepare for the next big thing. Or designing and planning for user privacy as first-class citizens. That could help you be prepared for meeting GDPR regulations. Coming back to the story, as Cheese Station C, Hem and Haw arrive only to find the same thing. No cheese. Angered and annoyed, Hem demands, "Who moved my cheese?" Hem and Haw had both assumed entitlement to the cheese and had counted on the cheese supply to always be there. Therefore, they're unprepared for this eventuality. So they decide to wait. And wait. Hem is habituated to his old routine and is frightened about the unknown. How many of us have found ourselves in this situation, right? Well, after a while of being in denial, lack of nourishment, and still with no sign of cheese, Haw decides to begin her search for new cheese. Fearful of this endeavor, she thinks, what would I do if I weren't afraid? And gathering all the courage and energy she could find, she starts a journey in the maze looking for new cheese. But not without chiseling. If you do not change, you can become extinct. On the walls of Cheese Station C for her friend to ponder. Still plagued with worry, perhaps she's waited too long. Haw begins worrying about the unknown again, but this time she brushes aside her fear. Her new mindset allows her to enjoy her venture once again. She begins to realize that when you move beyond your fear, you feel free. And finally, one day, Haw comes across Cheese Station N, abundant with cheese. She's hit the jackpot. The venture was all worth it. And the invaluable lessons she learned on this journey will serve her a lifetime. I hope you all enjoyed the story. Identity access and access management, and for that matter, most business domains are no different from domains. What was once new and cutting edge is now inadequate, or even obsolete, just like the cheese in Station C. But what's important is how we react to this change. And on that note, I'd like to pass the mic on to Shalmali to walk us through the moving cheese in IAM and how we at Workday are adapting to it.
Thank you, Sheetal. So thank you for walking us through that business classic. And if you think closely, it pretty much sits well with how organizations today adopt new technologies. The way in which organizations function is fundamentally shifting. Management of employees, data, and transactions happen all over the globe 24/7. Sheetal, do you want to go to the next slide?
Sorry.
Thank you. Corporate networks, desktop workstations, static policies, all are the story from the past. So today, businesses and transactions and transaction and data is moving. It is moving from where it was before. Sorry, I'm just having a little bit of trouble. Just give me one more second. Yeah, sorry about that. So being more mobile and digital is pretty much the mantra, both at workplace or at home. Businesses are looking for ways to operate efficiently by allowing their users to have the flexibility to access the relevant resources or the applications or the data from wherever they are. So kind of if you think about it, workers, they need access to sensitive resources. They need access to applications and data in their natural workspace to be productive. But let's talk about how organizations are handling security with respect to this changing nature of work. So the classic approach to security has always been a network perimeter strategy, where the trust is pretty much based on the location and the network. So you focus on defending the network perimeter and assume that everyone and everything which is inside is always trustworthy. And generally, that is achieved by a set of static policies that impose some kind of multi-factor authentication for users when they log in outside that network perimeter. But the same users, when they're inside that corporate network, can access anything and everything, including sensitive information, without additional checks. And this model made perfect sense in the past, right, where employees use corporate computers on corporate networks within the company walls to get access to applications which were hosted in the company infrastructure. But today, simply put, there are many avenues to access sensitive business data. And that data is being accessed more and more, both by internal as well as external users. So what are some of the problems with this classic perimeter-based approach? Firstly, as we talked about, right, the workplace and the workforce now is for most part fluid. So not everyone is going to log in from your corporate network. There are going to be vendors or third parties that require access to your network. So you can definitely impose, VPN-based logins, but that means that all users still need to use the corporate network. And again, it's not the best experience if they're using a tablet or a mobile. Also, managing the off-network and on-network premise means that an administrator now needs to maintain static policies. Today, we operate in a world where most companies are moving to the cloud, and most of the applications are hosted outside the realms of our network. Also, let's not forget the most important thing, which is once a user gets access, right? Like they get the keys to the kingdom, so they can pretty much access anything and everything in the network. So quite frankly, perimeter access, it inhibits users and simultaneously it invites unnecessary trust in the entities that could pose the most damage. So the real question to ask is, what is this new perimeter? What is the new cheese? The ability to verify the identity of the user, the ability to verify that the user is who they say they are, irrespective of where they're logging in from, is the real verification and the new perimeter. And identifying the user entails verifying something that they know, something that they have, or something that they are. For most part, identity verification has also gone through a journey by itself. But the real verification does not limit to a single user attribute, but it takes into consideration the whole context of the user. So what can one say was kind of the origin of this identity verification, right? It was essentially an identifier and a mechanism for an application to test what the user already knew. And a username along with a password did the job. But the challenge arose because now we were reliant on just a single factor. Administrators had to support their users who forgot their password. And at the same time, they had to come up with rules so that users do not set passwords such as 1234. And if users they do not put a lot of thought into what the password should be, or let's say they have the same password across all of their applications, it is very much easy to guess what that password is going to be, and it increases the probability for fraudulent access. I'm not even talking about social engineering and the various attacks that you could think of to get to a password. So to counter these challenges, administrators they started thinking of more factors when it came to identity verification. Also, as organizations matured, they understood that they needed to have multiple applications in their ecosystem. So creating separate keys for all of these different logs, it started posing new problems. Expecting users to remember different credentials for different applications was a nightmare for users as well as administrators who had to support these users when they forgot their password. There was a need to find a single key to the kingdom that is a capability to access all the applications seamlessly. And that problem was pretty much solved by an identity provider. So, an identity provider could enable a user to use a single credential to get access to all applications with their centralized identity. It was kind of like finding new cheese in the maze, which not only made the user's life easy, but it also provided a mechanism for the administrators to enforce controls in a central place. So, does it mean that we have found the solution to all our problems and that identity provider is the ultimate solution? Well, using an IDP is definitely a step in the right direction. But let's not forget that the underlying factor is still a username and a password. Also, now a user is making a third-party identity provider the custodian of their identity data versus owning it themselves. As applications matured, so did the ability to verify users, right? A single factor, as we saw, was posing problems. And so there was a need to add more than a single factor to verify a user's identity. Workday today offers different mechanisms for their customers to strengthen their security posture. So if you look at this slide and you go from left to right, you would see that the strength of the factor as well as the ability to verify a user is much more accurate. One could definitely ask a question to verify the model of your first car. But having a capability to identify a user using a touch ID is much more secure and a much better mechanism and a foolproof mechanism. But though we found new keys to the lock, there were still some inherent challenges that pushed organizations to look for better solutions. So when we talk about multi-factor authentication, right, there are numerous factors that are out there today. And we need to understand risks of these various factors as we think about strengthening identity verification. So firstly, let's talk about challenge questions, right? If you think about it, it's not really a second factor. Because if I know a user really well, it is very easy to guess the answer to the secret question. And to make things worse, users forget the answers that they had set. So in short, security questions, they suffer from a fundamental flaw, right? Their answers are either somewhat secure or they're easy to remember, but they're rarely both. And then we have our one-time passcode, which is delivered via SMS, which is prone to passcode spoofing or swim swapping. So as an attacker now, I can intercept that passcode and I can use it as my own to get access to the application. And finally, we have the hardware tokens, right? Hardware tokens have been around the longest. And obviously, they are secured, but users, they tend to lose the hardware keys. And sometimes we even have situations where they share those keys, which creates an admin nightmare. When you think about MFA, I think one of the biggest challenges is for administrators to strike a balance between usability and security. And it is given there are challenges, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be using a second factor. It just means that we should be looking for better mechanisms. So what is that next best option for us, which is both usability and security all in one? So passwordless authentication, it strikes a balance between that usability and security. And WebAuthn is one such standard. So it's a browser-based mechanism to log in into an application using the options that are already available to an end user. So in the simplest model, you can think about it in terms of three components. So the first one is the application, which is basically the application that the user is trying to log in into. Then is the browser, which is used by an end user to get access to the application. And most leading browsers today support WebAuthn as a means to log in. And then finally, which is a third layer, is the authenticators. And these could be either on-device authenticators. So if you take an example of, let's say, Touch ID on the Mac or Windows Hello, or it could be external authenticators, such as security keys that support U2F. So considering the flaws that we have today with second factors, WebAuthn has emerged as an industry standard that we should all be considering. So let's dive a little bit deep and see how it works. So suppose we have Haw. Let's continue the example and the story that we already have, right? So we have Haw who wants to log in into a service from a machine, and that machine, it supports fingerprint authentication. Haw also has a U2F security key that she has plugged in into the laptop. So at the time of login, the browser is going to detect the fingerprint as well as the key, and it is going to present Haw with an option to register those for WebAuthn. Once Haw has registered these authenticators, the next time she's going to log in, all she needs to do is use her fingerprint or the security key to get access to the service. There might be cases again, right? Because we know that this is an upcoming standard, not all browsers support it. So it's quite possible that a browser may not support WebAuthn, in which case the user can always go back to that primary authentication that they used before to get access. So one might wonder, why should we be thinking about passwordless? What are the advantages, right? So first and foremost, it includes like two factors in one, right? So it's much more secure. So it's a combination of something that you are, which is your biometric, and something that you have, which is a device that you have. It could be your phone, it could be your laptop. And secondly, it is phishing resistant. So it kind of definitely circumvents all the cons that are present today for a username and an MFA approach. Also, to talk a little bit about the phishing resistant aspect, if Haw were to register her Touch ID to be used with Workday, and then accidentally, let's say she ends up on a phished site, her Touch ID will not let the login go through, and thus will protect the user from, getting their credentials stolen on a phished site. And then the other advantage of WebAuthn is basically because it's a completely passwordless approach, it is much more secure and it speeds up the login process. So it's kind of a win-win both, not only for the administrators, but also for the users. So now that we understand what the new cheese is, it's important to know where the industry is going in terms of identity and access management, and how we can prepare ourselves for that change. Passing the control to Sheetal to bring it home.
Thank you, Sharmili. Yes, we had a great time building passwordless sign-on feature for our customers. But if anything we've learned from Sniff, Scurry, and Haw is that we shouldn't get too comfortable for too long with the name cheese. As Shalmili mentioned, the perimeter is disappearing. At the same time, security threats continue to change and evolve, feeding on loopholes and assumptions made about the system, people, and processes. Importantly, these gaps are architectural in nature, with assumptions made about attack vectors in order to do day-to-day work efficiently. These assumptions, combined with some static access policies, open gaps that can be exploited by both internal and external threats. Internal threats, in particular, have knowledge, leverage, access, and operational information that gives them an even greater ability to inflict damage on your organization, your company data, and your employee population. Verizon's data breach investigation report from 2020 analyzed a total of close to 158,000 incidents from 81 contributing organizations worldwide. Of those, around 32,000 security incidents met their quality standards. And from the subset, about 3,950, so almost 400, were confirmed breaches. According to the report, almost 80% of attacks on web applications involved using stolen credentials. And these are stats for North America. If you choose Asia Pacific region, that number is around 30%. Another interesting statistics is about internal actors. Insider privilege can lead to misuse, even if accidental. 30% of breaches were due to internal actors. And actually 8% of the breaches were misused by authorized users. The threat landscape, particularly from internal actors, is as dangerous as it's ever been. And this brings us to the concept of a trusted internal network versus an untrusted external network. With cloud systems being the mainstream way for storing and using enterprise data, and mobile devices being brought into the corporate environment, we can no longer have a network perimeter-centric approach towards security. We need to securely enable access for all user types, regardless of the location, device, or the network. More than ever, organizations need to empower their employees to operate efficiently, securely, and in compliance. As a system of record for enterprise, Workday needs to be equally available for users and the organization to make the most of their capabilities. In a way, the maze is transforming. The cheese is moving to the cloud, if you will. Zero trust is one of the most commonly used buzzwords in the security industry. So, what is zero trust? Zero trust is a security framework developed by Forrester research analyst John Kinderwag in 2010 that throws away the idea of a trusted internal network versus an untrusted external network. Instead, it emphasizes on a model of treating everything as untrusted unless proven otherwise. The model builds on the concept of verify, then trust. Zero trust is a strategy and not a product. So there is no one pill or one product that would make us zero trust compliant. As a result of the complexities of applying zero trust to legacy and existing environments overall, companies really haven't been able to fully implement this model. And organizations should think about building zero trust by design instead of as a retrofit. In other words, organizations should pursue the zero trust model as part of their overall digital transformation strategy as they move more to the cloud and retire old legacy systems. Today, we will just scratch the surface of zero trust. In a zero trust model for workforce security, a number of factors play into the successful verification of a user. Having strong end user credentials to protect against credential compromise. Providing a reporting and notification system that consistently encourages adoption of strong credential policies such as multi-factor and passwordless authentication. Second, ensuring access to trusted devices, providing visibility to all of the devices, regardless of them being managed or unmanaged. Building an adaptive risk score using contextual signals such as access location, browser information, data sensitivity. Providing intelligent security evaluation through continuous activity monitoring and building security vectors to support dynamic identity verification. creating a model of context-based access policies based on user behavior analysis, based on some of the inputs we just talked about, and also taking into consideration the account identity, the role or the privilege of the account that the account holds, the activity location, whether the activity is coming from a managed or an unmanaged device, evaluating criteria for additional authentication. Based on the threat level, what should be the strength of the authentication factor? So overall, building a robust IAM model as we evaluate access to data and applications. While security solutions can provide the relevant signals, organizations should also have an agency in this process to determine actions to take based on risk. Adaptive risk score and contextual access policy play a crucial role in building continuous authentication in zero trust model. There is a need for intelligent system that can make a yes or a no decision that's evaluated at runtime, not statically. From customer standpoint, this adds customization and puts them in the driver's seat. And from end user standpoints, this introduces a seamless user experience. Zero Trust provides a great framework or strategy for addressing the disappearing perimeter. Its verify, then trust mantra allows business to function in this modern landscape of changing perimeters that we all find ourselves. The situation is especially exacerbated by the COVID pandemic that has gripped our world today. So are we done with change yet? Should we enjoy our success? Of course, but should we hang our shoes? I don't think so. Is it ever an option? So let's take a look at what's next. So far, we've seen the concept of a unified or single identity, which in corporate world would typically reside with an IAM solution provider or a human capital resource management solution provider, such as Workday. Now, here's a radically different concept called self-sovereign identity, which is a people-centric approach to identity management, treating user privacy as first-class citizens. So individuals can have more control over what information they share, with whom they share, and what they share, and when they share it. Decentralized digital identity, also known as self-sovereign identity, is an ID verification and authentication framework that usually consists of an issuer, individual, and a verifier. Issuer would typically be an institution such as a school or government who can provide, manage, and revoke credentials with ease. Individuals such as yourself is the sole owner of the identity and is in control of the information by selecting what you want to share. And the verifier is someone who would want to verify credentials instantly, like a bank or a healthcare provider, your employer. So let's walk through a fairly standard scenario. Beth. She's a student or a recent graduate pursuing a new job. Typically, she updates her resume, fills out a job application, applies for the job. She assesses the interview, and now her prospective employer would like to validate her credentials. After completing a manual process of submitting her credentials, she may face a waiting period of a few weeks as the prospective employer verifies each credential, degree, the certifications, academic coursework, etc. with a score. All credentials check out, and congratulations, Beth. You just landed the job. It's with a technical contracting firm, let's say. So even after getting the job, Beth may require an ongoing verification to ensure compliance, often requiring additional verification checks by the employer annually to ensure standards have been met and the certification is still active. If Beth falls out of compliance, it can lead to steep penalties for her employer and unproductive time for Beth. So as we look to the future, we envision a more frictionless credentialing process that looks a little like this. Beth owns a trusted digital profile containing verifiable credentials. She could digitally apply for a new job with her credentials being verified by the prospective employer during the hiring process. With training, certification, and licensing credentials being automatically updated over time, any additional proof regarding renewal or certification is already confirmed, eliminating the need for the employer to manually check a database or call the responsible authority for validation. Beth's credential would act as a single source of truth. Trusted, up-to-date, and instantly authentic. The emergence of distributed ledger technology and blockchain technology provides the opportunity for fully decentralized digital identity management, where entities are free to use and share root of trust. Globally distributed ledgers or decentralized peer-to-peer networks provide the means for managing a root of trust without introducing a centralized authority or a single point of failure. As credentials are issued by organizations and educational institutions, held by individuals, and shared with employers that need to verify them, blockchain provides a common trust layer, allowing each of these parties to independently verify their authenticity. As a common source of verification, blockchain enables data to move between parties, and its distributed ledger can prove that the data has not been modified and the credentials are still valid. This kind of credential creates a transparent, trustworthy, and reliable source of truth that is instantly authentic once shared. However, as with every emerging technology, there is a lack of ecosystem to support this on a mass scale. And a lot of good work is going on in pretty much every field or every industry at the moment. At Workday, we're trying to address this problem by creating a closed-loop transaction and building a critical mass necessary for the ecosystem to develop. We're leveraging our already mature recruitment system to create an identity through Workday Credentials platform, which they can use and then apply for jobs, and also accrue learning credentials through Workday Learning. As we build a platform, anyone can sign up to become an issuer or a verifier. With this, we offer our Workday customers to be a part of the ecosystem and contribute to building the necessary critical mass. Workday is actively engaged with organizations like W3C and Decentralized Identity Foundation to ensure that credentials are compatible with other standards-based platforms. Lots of great work is ongoing in this area, and some of what we're discussing is forward-looking. But at Workday, we know that if you do not change, you can become extinct. And we always keep our shoes close. So, what are some takeaways? Change happens. As Heraclitus, a Greek philosopher, once said, the only constant in life is change. Cheese moves or disappears. Enterprise infrastructure is growing from private data center to cloud infrastructure. Perimeters are disappearing. Threats from internal actors, intentional or accidental, are growing at a rapid rate. Identity security that worked 10 to 15 years ago can no longer provide adequate protection to your business, your end users, and your data. But did all of this happen overnight? No. Anticipate and monitor for change. In most cases, there is no one single factor or cause of change. Possibly the maize is being redesigned. The cheese could be getting past its prime. Perhaps the cheese harvesting techniques have changed. At Workday, we are building strategic thinking into the very fabric of security, and for that matter, all of our business domains. As the enterprise infrastructure evolves, security teams should anticipate and get ready to revise their IAM strategies, policies, and technologies to secure the organization and customer assets. All of this while providing a seamless customer experience, which isn't very easy. Monitoring is key to anticipating change. Monitor customer usage of IAM solutions. Build robust metrics and analytics into the product, collecting anonymous data. What form of authentication are they using the most? What does their authentication and access policy look like? Is the current solution solving the business needs? Interview the customers. Seek their feedback. Create a community of customers to brainstorm on ideas. That alone is not enough. Monitor the industry and technology changes. What are some key changes in the existing standards? What new standards are being introduced? What new technology are being developed? How are infrastructure changes influencing technology choices? Then adapt. Now that you have anticipated and prepared for the change, make plans to adapt. The quicker you let go of the old cheese, the sooner you can enjoy the new cheese. Plan timely upgrades. create end-of-service plans for older technologies and IAM solutions to wean off the customers from weaker or obsolete security practices, such as challenge questions, and build solutions based on more secure and infrastructure-relevant standards, such as multi-factor and passwordless authentication. And continue monitoring, anticipating, and adapting while doing all this. As you build this growth mindset, you may start enjoying the search, and you may be able to build a portfolio of cheeses and possibly even research a new variety. You can be the change. Now, this is a powerful concept that the story doesn't talk about. But isn't this what makes business or industry leaders? Some of the way you can influence the change is by participating and contributing to maintaining and revising existing industry standards, or researching and investing and inventing new standards and solutions that could help the industry and your business both grow. At Workday, we are investing in cutting-edge technologies such as WebAuthn for passwordless sign-on and blockchain for Workday credentials. Always keep asking yourself, what would I do if I weren't afraid? Thank you for choosing to be here with us today and giving us your valuable time. We'd be happy to hear your feedback and take any questions.
Okay, I can start with the question. So we have a question on what is adaptive risk score and what does the continual runtime evaluation mean? Is it going to use machine learning for it? So that's a great question. Yes, so the adaptive risk score that we talked about, it pretty much what does is it understands the user behavior. So it's going to create a baseline for a user based on the parameters of what he does in the system, right? So what time does the user log in? Where does he log in from? What are the tasks or the data that the user accesses? And then if it sees any outlier or anything, any deviation from this norm, then it is going to increase that risk score for that user. And so that is kind of like a feedback loop, which goes to the application, and the application steps up the user for additional authentication. So that's pretty much what adaptive is. Obviously, it does use machine learning to make that judgment and get to that score and keep improving on it. Yeah, Sheetal, do you?
I think one question I see is, how do you prep for GDPR compliance with something like the self-sovereign identity? So actually, to answer that question, we don't store any personally identifiable information on the blockchains. So they always stay with the end users. What we store is the public component of their DID or digital identity. And so that makes us naturally compliant for GDPR. And any of those restrictions, especially with GDPR, we have to take into consideration the data delete or rewriting or a right to forget, a right to own. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'll take one more. The identity systems are becoming more complex and expensive. Who do you think should pay for them in the long run? Would it be the employers? Would it be the individuals or any third parties like Apple or Google? So that's a good question, and it is more forward-looking, I would think. It depends on who owns that identity. But as we see this model kind of mature with self-sovereign identity, it would kind of go to a joint pricing model where the individual owns a part of the pricing, and so does the enterprise who wants to utilize those capabilities as an issuer and a verifier. So I think it'll be like a shared cost model between the individuals and the enterprises. Okay.
I think I see one on adaptive authentication. Yeah, so to elaborate a little bit on the adaptive authentication, so it is more about building in signals in your applications and kind of creating a risk score model in your application, which is not based on static or static data. It's more about a dynamic information, like what is your IP location at the moment of your activity, not necessarily when you just signed in. Maybe you moved out of your VPN, you were signed in from in-network, and then you moved out of your VPN. So does that mean that you could potentially open up gaps for attacks? Possibly, because you might have a different authentication policy if you're coming from in-network versus off-network, right? So doing something like a continuous IP check as the APIs come in helps with creating an adaptive model or a continuous authentication model for evaluating the risk. There are a lot of other factors. Location is just one of them. Whether you're coming from a trusted device or whether you're coming in from from whether you're coming from in network, outside of network, or whether you are accessing a sensitive piece of information, such as, say, whether you're just running a particular task, just a regular task, or whether you're trying to download your W2 information, or you're trying to change your security settings.
So there is another question that says, thank you for the presentation. The storytelling to explain that the concepts was stunning. So thank you, ladies. That was amazing. Everyone appreciated that. Someone's question is, which book would you recommend for beginner and IAM? Or are there so many?
I know.
Yeah. There is no particular one book that I recommend. So when I started out, it was more about trying to study the standards. So if you look at identity and access management, so one of the first things that I started following was the OWASP top 10, right? Because that kind of talks a lot about what are some of the security standards for identity and access management as one of the portions of the web application security in general.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then I started following the different protocols. So looking at all of those different protocols individually helps. Single sign-on services like SAML or OIDC. Read up those RFCs, and we could potentially look up some books, but it's more about understanding those RFCs and what needs to be done for that. OAuth 2.0. Time-based one-time passcodes, and I'm getting into the multi-factor area now. The time-based one-time passcode, HOTP, TOTP, reading on the WebAuthn as a protocol, understanding how what is zero trust. So if you can get hold of any of the papers that John Kinderberg published on zero trust, that's a great source. CSO Online is a great source I found for some of this information. Yeah, so there is no one particular book, I would say. There is a lot of information or a lot of videos or talks and books on O'Reilly or a lot of different platforms like Coursera. So I would start with some of that as well. But OWASP would definitely be my first point.
Great. Yeah, that's definitely a lot of resources available out there. So that's really good. And then another question is how, or are there any thoughts on how this will impact schools who are working with minor aged students?
Yeah, so is it more like in terms of the self-sovereign identity? Yeah, I would think the schools would be involved as such in terms of like the issuing and the verifying part of it. But when it comes to minor age students, I wouldn't believe that they would have some kind of a guardian, right, who would also play a role in this, primarily because they are not going to be the end users who are going to pay for it. So it'll kind of it is then a shared partnership between, let's say, the guardian of those students as well as the issuing and the verifying parties. If that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you. And another question, again, another audience member thanking you. As a woman pivoting in my career, how would you suggest I start as I look into this industry, specifically in the non-too technical roles? Again, another word to start question. There's so many places to start. It's hard to, of course, I would say start with WSIS.
Yeah, and maybe start on it on a very high level first, right? And then you can develop your understanding and get into the depths of it. Like you don't need to start with OAuth or SAML or those kind of things. First, understand what does IAM mean on a very high level. What does that model look like? What does accounts mean? What does authentication mean? And then you can, as it's kind of like peeling an onion, right? You kind of start getting into the depths one by one, picking the area that interests you most. So that's how I would look at it. I would look at it from a very high level on what does a model mean and how does a company kind of think about IAM or employ those models, and then look at each piece separately, whether it is accounts, whether it's authentication. Zero trust, I think, would be a little bit further out. First, understand the basic concepts, get into the depths, and then see where the industry is going with it.
Very nice. Thank you. All right. There was one question for me that said they missed the event that mentions something about opening up March 17th. I might have misspoke. March 11th is when we open up our Veterans Apprenticeship Program applications. So if you have any female veterans or if you're a veteran yourself, we would love for you all to be able to apply. It's a paid for training, 2-year paid apprenticeship, and then employment at the end of the program. So we're very pleased to announce that we have some employer partners in place, and we're going to be making those announcements next week with the big news release and all that fun stuff. So just stay tuned. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you'll receive a notification as well. And that application is open until April 1st. So March 25th is a virtual career fair, and strategic partners and conference sponsors will be recruiting from that event, and all WSIS members have the ability to update their profiles and upload their resumes. So when someone says, I am a new WSIS member, yay, thank you. Thank you for joining us today on the Workday webinar, and we appreciate you being part of our community. And I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much for your contributions to this webinar, for engaging with our audience and taking all these wonderful questions. And if anyone that's tuned in needs additional information, you could always reach out to me at lynn@wicis.org, WICYS, and I could share that information with the Workday team, and we could get back to you at any time. So that's it. There's one more great presentation. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your afternoon with us. And thank you to both of you from Workday for presenting this fabulous presentation. I really enjoyed it. Put a lot of hard work and effort, and I appreciate your contributions to the cybersecurity workforce and for sharing your knowledge and wealth with the community. So thank you for all that you do.
Likewise.
Yeah, likewise.
We're happy to be here.
Yeah, we're really happy to be here and share our experiences with the audience. For all the, all the aspiring women who are trying to join the security world, I would just like to say that, cybersecurity is vast. Identity and access management is a small space in the cybersecurity space, and it is a very, very interesting space. It is growing leaps and bounds. There's a lot of research going on, and it is a really exciting time to be in this space. So I really see some, interests in the channel, in the chats, and I would really encourage you to, follow this passion and look deeper into identity and access management. You can always look me up on LinkedIn or me or Shalmali, and we'd be happy to answer any of your questions there. Please connect with us. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thank you, Isis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.